Welcome, traveler of time. Whether you've come to unwind or drift gently into sleep, I'm grateful to have you here tonight. Let me know where you're listening from and what hour finds you. I imagine us scattered across the centuries, like candlelight in distant windows, connected by silence. If this kind of storytelling brings a little stillness to your night, feel free to subscribe. There are many more strange, forgotten corners of history waiting for us. Tonight, we return to the 19th century, to a world of corsets and candlelit mirrors, where the pursuit of beauty was not just vanity, it was survival. Where white powder meant status, but also meant madness, and where women touched their own deaths every morning, with fingers stained in lead and hope. Take a breath, let your body settle, and when you're ready, we'll begin. You wake up beautiful and dying. You wake slowly, not with the comfort of rest, but with the drag of something heavy behind your eyes. A headache blooms quietly, pulsing from the base of your skull like a second heartbeat. The nausea is familiar now. So is the bitter taste in the back of your mouth. The way your tongue feels thick, the way your stomach turns when you sit up too fast, but then you see yourself, and for a moment everything stills. Your skin glows like porcelain, cool, smooth, unblemished. A pale perfection stares back at you from the mirror's warped glass. No spots, no sun, no age. You look expensive, ethereal. A duchess in the candlelight, a painting brought to life. Beautiful, too beautiful. You touch your cheek and your fingers tremble. They always tremble now. It started slowly, just a little stiffness in the joints. A moment of fog in the afternoon, then came the toothaches, the bleeding gums. The strange gray cast around your fingernails. You started forgetting things, names, days, the shape of certain words in your mouth, but your complexion? Flawless. You look like heaven, you feel like death. The maid refills your jar each week without asking, pale cream, smooth and heavy. The color of fresh milk and powdered bone, Laird's bloom of youth. The label reads, embossed in gold, sealed. With pride, imported, coveted, trusted, you dip your fingers in, as always. You smooth the paste across your forehead, around your eyes, beneath the curve of your jaw. The mirror fogs slightly from your breath. You don't recognize the woman who stares back. She's lovelier than you remember. Colder, too. Somewhere beneath the paint, your body is failing. Your lips are dry. Peeling in the corners, your gums recede. Your vision blurs by candlelight. And always that ache behind your temples, as if something inside your skull is swelling. You know what it is? You knew long before the doctor's whisper confirmed it. Lead, the base of beauty, the price of perfection. Laird's bloom of youth. The most popular cosmetic in 3 counties, praised in noble letters and physicians' journals alike, is killing you. One ghostly layer at a time, but tomorrow you'll apply it again, because it works. Because you're expected to look a certain way, because the parties don't stop, the invitations don't pause, because a fading face is a kind of failure, because no one listens to a sick woman unless she's beautiful first. So you smile, you powder, you glow, you die just a little more, and tonight, as you press a damp cloth to your lips and feel another tooth loosen, you wonder if your skin remains perfect. Will anyone notice when the rest of you is gone? Beauty was a moral obligation. You weren't raised to be vain. That's what they told you. Again and again, vanity was for harlots, actresses, fallen women in crimson silks. You were to be modest, composed, a vessel of virtue, polished by patience and piety. Beauty wasn't something to chase. It was something you earned, and yet everything around you told another story. Victorian society whispered its expectations like a hymn beneath every spoken sermon. Pale skin meant purity. A face untouched by sun, wind, or sweat meant you were refined, above labor, above lust. Rosy cheeks were not a sign of exertion, but fertility. Youth itself was treated like a moral state, proof that you obeyed, stayed indoors, prayed when asked, and kept your voice low. Beauty wasn't just admired, it was demanded, your reflection. It wasn't for you, it was for your mother, for your suitors, for the church, for the eyes of strangers on thee. You were taught to speak quietly, but look pleasing, to hide your thoughts, but never your complexion. A pious mind could be doubted, a flawless face could not. Every etiquette guide said the same. A lady is first noticed by her grace of form, and next by the chastity of her complexion. A red spot, a stray hair, a freckle, they weren't just imperfections, they were failings. They were warnings to others. She may be difficult. She may be spoiled. She may not marry well. They could undo you before you even opened your mouth. So you learned early. Appearance was not a pleasure. It was not self-expression. It was a defense. You watched other girls fade, slowly. Quietly, one blemish at a time. A rash mistaken for disease. A patch of dryness that someone called decay. Rumors started in powder rooms and spread faster than any infection. And when your time came, when your skin began to rebel, when a shadow bloomed under your eye, when the pallor became too real, you knew what had to be done. The pharmacist did not even blink. He handed you the bottle as though you were offering communion, a small glass jar capped in tin, the label elegantly etched. With silver script, Laird's bloom of youth, he didn't explain what was inside. He didn't have to. You already knew. White lead, vinegar, almond oil, crushed pearl, perhaps. If you could afford it, a poison, yes, but a trusted one, fashionable, elegant, entirely expected. What else were you supposed to do? Say no and fade into obscurity. Let your face reflect your hunger, your age, your poverty, your fear? No, you couldn't. You wouldn't, not when the marriage offers might stop. Not when reputation meant survival. Not when a single spot could doom your name in a single Sunday sermon. You bought the bottle, you took it home. You painted yourself perfect because beauty wasn't about pride, not really. It was about staying visible, staying desirable, staying alive. And as you watched the bloom return to your cheeks, you told yourself, this isn't vanity, this is virtue. The cosmetic that eats skin. You opened the jar again. It's always heavier than you remember. A thick chalky white, like snow fallen over a grave. The scent is faintly sweet, faintly sour, faintly wrong. You stir it with the edge of your smallest finger. It resists at first, then yields like wet clay. Laird's bloom of youth. That's what the curling label says in gentle copperplate, now stained along the edges with age and use. For a radiant countenance, it promises, restores. Natural bloom evens tone, vanishes fatigue. You dab it beneath your eyes, across the bridge of your nose. Down to the hollow of your throat, a slow ritual, practiced, familiar. You don't flinch anymore when it stings. No one told you what was inside. Or maybe they did, and you didn't listen. Lead acetate, white lead carbonate, words that sound more like apothecary ingredients than poisons. They roll off the tongue gently. They live in glass vials behind trusted counters. They wear the mask of medicine, but what they do, that's no secret. Each stroke across your cheek is a tiny betrayal. A slow burn. The cream smooths your skin because it kills your skin, cell by cell, layer by layer. Wrinkles vanish because the tissue that made them has been dissolved. It eats you slowly. That's the brilliance. Not like fire, not like acid, but like time. Like a whispered erosion. One morning, your skin flakes. The next, a sore that won't quite heal. Then, the gums begin to recede. The headaches begin to hum, your thoughts scatter. Hard to gather, you forget words, you forget names, but your face? Your face looks perfect. The lead does not stay on the surface. It never intended to. It sinks deeper through the skin, into blood, into marrow, into the dark folds of the brain where memories live, where sleep is made, where fear begins. You tell yourself it can't be that bad. It can't be, not when every apothecary from London to Boston keeps it stocked. Not when even the Queen's ladies are said to use it. Not when the newspaper advertises it with such certainty, such softness. If it were dangerous, someone would have said something by now, wouldn't they? You apply a second layer to your jawline. You wait. You watch yourself transform again into the version the world prefers. Smoother, paler, untouched by weather or grief. The pain dulls into background noise, the same way a candle burns unnoticed until it's down to the wick. They call it a cosmetity. But It's not, it is a treatment in the oldest, most terrible sense of the word, not meant to heal, but to conceal until concealment becomes decay. And as you close the jar and set it gently on the shelf, next to your comb, your pins, the handkerchief with the faint blood stain, you feel the pulse behind your left eye begin again. A throb, a pressure. You whisper, just tired. And then you whisper again, but at least I'm still beautiful. Shopping for poison in broad daylight. You walk into the chemist's shop. It smells of lavender and lye. The floor creaks with each step, polished but uneven, worn by years of footsteps. Hopeful, desperate, dying. Sunlight slipped in through the high front window, catching on glass bottles and gilded lettering. The shelves glitter like a reliquary. You are not alone. Other women stand quietly in front of display cases, lifting lids, unwrapping samples, testing creams on the backs of their hands like they're reading tea leaves. Their faces are pale, powdered perfect, too perfect. Beneath one woman's jawline, a bruise blossoms purple where rouge couldn't hide it. No one says a word. The shelves are lined with cures and comforts. French arsenic complexion wafers, ivory tablets in a pail, pink tin, belladonna drops for lustered eyes, small, dark vials beside brass-handled droppers, radium rouge, the box painted with a glowing red-cheeked lady, lips curved into something too stiff to be joy. Each one claims beauty, each one delivers something else. There's no regulation here, no physician standing at the door, no warning labels, no side effect disclaimers, no black box text in capital letters, just marketing, lace edge typography. Words like purify, enhance, correct, rejuvenate, they sound like salvation. They look like salvation. The brighter the box, the deadlier the contents. One woman picks up a small glass jar. Her hand trembles. She lifts it to the counter, smiles with only one side of her face. When the pharmacist hands her change, her glove slips. You see her fingers pale and cracked, nails yellowing, skin flaking at the seams. She coughs, not gently, not politely. A deep, wet noise, ripped from her chest like a warning bell. She pulls out a lace handkerchief and covers her mouth. You catch a glimpse. Red, thick, too much. She sees you see it, and then she says softly, "Another bottle, please." No one looks up. Not the pharmacist. Not the women beside her. Not. Even the children sitting just outside the door, waiting with empty lunch pails and scuffed boots, too young to understand what poison smells like, but old enough to recognize its scent. This is normal. This is routine. This is what it means to be beautiful in daylight. While dying quietly in the dark, the jar you came for is already wrapped in tissue. The clerk had it ready before you spoke. A small box marked Bloom of Youth, tied with ribbon the color of cream. You don't ask about ingredients. He doesn't offer. You exchange coins, nod once, and leave outside. The sun has dimmed. You feel it. Not on your skin. That's hidden beneath powder and promise, but deep. In the ache behind your teeth, in the soft give of your gums when you press your tongue against them. You smile anyway. You pass a mirror and catch your reflection. You still look perfect, and that, after all, is what matters. The powder that ate through faces. You're at a ball. The air smells of wax, sweat, wine, and something sharper, like Lila left too long in stagnant water. Candlelight burns low in the chandeliers, casting everything in gold and shadow. The music swells, laughter ripples, shoes slide across polished floors, and everywhere faces pale, unmoving, ghost-like. The powder is thick tonight. You feel it clinging to your skin like a second mask. It settles into every crease, every pore. You touch your collar and brush some loose. The residue drifts like chalk onto your bodice. Soft, white, fine as ash. Venetian cirrus, they call it. A mixture of white lid and vinegar. Richly perfumed, painfully expensive, and utterly poisonous. Everyone wears it. You glance around. The Duchess of Harrow, cheeks perfect, eyes vacant. Lady Fenworth, forehead too smooth. Jawline faintly sagging beneath the weight of powder layered over scar. Even the young girls, barely 16, wear the death mask glow of it. Porcelain. dolls, everyone. You feel your face cracking when you smile. But you smile anyway. Sirius wasn't always common. It used to be for royalty. Elizabeth herself wore it, the Virgin Queen. Painted alabaster with lips like crushed roses and veins that spidered beneath her skin. They say she never let anyone see her without it. They say it burned. They say she died with it still on. And still, here you are. You remember the warnings. Lead causes swelling of the face, erosion of gums, loosening of teeth, madness, death. But warnings are for the poor, and you are not poor. You are fashionable. You know, women who lost their faces to this, powder, literally the flesh rotted from the jawward, peeled away like wax from a melting candle. The term was lead jaw, whispered behind fans and fluttered over lace kerchiefs. A quiet horror, unspeakable. And yet everyone spoke of it carefully, cruelly. She must have applied it improperly. Too thick, too often, too desperate. The problem was never the powder. The problem was the woman. You sip your wine. You keep your movements slow. One crack in your powdered veneer and the whole illusion might fall. The layers of Sirius cover everything. The fatigue. The panic. The skin that no longer heals. Beneath it, your flesh itches, burns. You try not to think about it. Across the ballroom, a woman stumbles. Her mouth opens. Her teeth, the ones that remain, are black. Her smile is stained red from wine and blood. Someone escorts her out gently, like she's tired. No one gasps. No one stops dancing. They've seen it before. You tell yourself it won't happen to you. You apply it differently, sparingly, with care. You've read the treatises. You've bought the finest blends, but still, your temples ache, your gums bleed when you rinse, your thoughts blur at the edges. And yet, what's the alternative? To arrive barefaced? To show your age? To be pitied? Laughed at? Overlooked? To disappear long before you die? You watch the dancers spin past, glowing, ghostly, golden, their beauty flawless, their poison shared, and you wonder as you raise your glass again, is death worse than disgrace, or simply a slower way to be forgotten? Symptoms no one dared speak of. You forget your sister's name. It's only for a moment, a flicker, a hollow in your memory, but it terrifies you. She was just here, smiling, speaking, holding your hand. You remember her face, her laugh, the way she used to braid your hair. But the name won't come. Your hands shake as you reach for the ribbon of your corset. They tremble more now. When you write, when you sew, when you lift the teacup and feel it clink too hard against the saucer. You've dropped plates. You've cut yourself twice in the last week, and still you smile, still. You powder your face, then come the sounds, a scream, sharp, piercing. From somewhere else in the house, you rush to the corridor. Nothing, no one. The maids haven't stirred. The doors are still, but you heard it. You swear you did. You start to wonder what's real and what isn't. Your doctor says it's your womb. He calls it female hysteria, says your body is too sensitive. Your blood is too melancholic. Perhaps you read too much. Perhaps your nerves are simply overwhelmed. He prescribes laudanum, a tincture of opium, to quiet the mind and soften the thoughts. You take it? Of course you do. What other option is there? He never asks about the lead. No one does. You bring it up once, quietly, a suggestion. A question shaped like a joke. Perhaps I'm simply wearing too much Sirius. He laughs, and then he frowns, and then he says, don't be silly. Because no one dares accuse beauty of murder. Sirius's sophistication, its nobility. It's the mark of refinement and restraint. To suggest that your own vanity could be killing you is not just distasteful, it's vulgar. Low, ungrateful. So instead, they blame your sex. They say it's the air. The moon, your temperament. They say women have always been fragile. And still, you forget more each day. You find yourself staring at the same page of a letter for hours. And you wake up not remembering where you are. One afternoon, you call your husband by the wrong name. He laughs nervously. But you don't. Behind closed doors, you start to hear things. Not just voices, whispers, movement, breathing. You see your reflection move when you haven't. You feel watched. even when alone. And not the only one. At church, a woman collapses during Mass, sobbing that she can't feel her hands. Another begins convulsing at her sewing table. Another stopped speaking altogether. They're sent away to rest, to recover at the countryside. But none return quite the same. The whispers begin. She saw demons. She tried to eat her own veil. She was found scraping her skin raw, muttering about worms. No one mentions lead. No one questions the powder. Because to question it would be to question everything. The ballrooms, the beauty, the silk, the rituals. The reason women are valued in the first place. So you powder your face, you sip your laudanum, you try to remember your sister's name, and you wonder, if you forget yourself completely, will anyone notice you're gone? The silent experiments. You visit the physician. He wears a kind smile and glass spectacles, fingers stained with ink. He listens as you speak. Of the trembling hands, the thinning hair, the headaches that crawl behind your eyes like something living. He nods, murmurs reassurance, and scribbles on a folded slip of paper. More laudanum, more calming tonics, a new syrup, this one mixed with mercury. You thank him. You always thank him. And then, when you leave, he sends your powder to the lab. He doesn't tell you. He doesn't tell any of his patients. But he's seen the pattern, the same symptoms, again and again, among the wealthiest. The most refined, only the most beautiful women seem to be losing their minds. In 1869, a quiet paper circulates among Britain's medical elite. The title is careful, dry, on the physiological effects of cosmetic substances. But within it lies something sharp. Repeated application of facial whiteners may induce neuromuscular degeneration and early paralysis. They don't say the word lead. They don't say serous. And they certainly don't say stop, because to stop would be to accuse. To accuse would be to offend. And to offend a lady of high standing, even for her own safety, is a dangerous thing. Instead, the warnings stay tucked in medical journals and behind locked drawers in hospital archives. The public never sees them. The society columns still praise the flawless pallor of duchesses and debutantes. Perfumeries still sell powders wrapped in silk ribbons and promises. The beauty industry has defenders, not scientists, but husbands, patrons, and editors. A woman who dies young is tragic. A woman who grows old is mocked. One doctor who dares speak out, a Mr. James Featherstone of Edinburgh, loses nearly all his patients. He publishes a letter condemning the use of white lead in daily cosmetics. A week later, his home is vandalized. The industry replies with pamphlets of their own. Serous, they write, is purified, refined, imported from Venice, fit for queens. They point to Queen Victoria herself, whose portrait glows ghost pale on every parlor wall. No one asks what killed her maid. Meanwhile, the tests continue behind closed doors. Physicians test powder samples on animals, on poor women, on unknowing patients. Some begin keeping secret ledgers, a list of clients and their symptoms. Others write private letters to colleagues overseas, describing what they see but cannot publish. Faces swollen, hair falling out in clumps, memory lost, madness creeping in through rouge and pearl dust. But always the question remains, who will risk their reputation to tell the truth? Not you. You still wear the powder. You still buy the most expensive brand. You still present your face like it's armor, painted, precise, perfect, because what choice do you have? Without beauty, what remains? So you swallow the mercury, you sip the syrup, you pretend the doctor's silence is kindness. And you wonder, if truth lives only in locked drawers and fading ledgers, who will warn the next woman before she too forgets her name? Mirror, mirror, the obsession with white skin. You notice the darker girls at the dressmakers. They wait in corners, heads lowered, gloves still on. Their mothers speak softly, quickly, almost apologetically, as the tailor lifts swatches. And sighs, "Too much sun," he mutters, not even looking them in the eye. Perhaps a high collar, a bonnet large enough to help. You feel the heat in your own face, not from shame, but from the sudden need to be paler. You've already powdered once today. You excuse yourself to the corridor, lift your compact, and apply a second layer. The white dust clings to the sweat at your temples. You rub harder, hating the pink in your cheeks. You must not look alive. In your time, beauty is not health. Beauty is not energy or strength or color. It is whiteness, not just pale, sickly. The more corpse-like, the better. Veins must be visible, cheeks must be cool to the touch. Your lips must seem starved, not kissed. Even fainting is fashionable. You've seen it, the way a woman collapses in the middle of the gallery. Her corset too tight, her blood sugar too low, her knees elegant as they fold beneath her, and people rush, not in fear, but in admiration. Such delicate nerves, they whisper, a complexion like porcelain. They say it like it's a compliment. It is. The artists paint you that way. White, fragile, glazed in cold light. In portraits, the skin is bleached. In poems, women. They're described as milk pale, snow fair, moonlit. The slightest tan means labor, means dirt, means outside. The woman who gardens is a servant. The woman who walks too long in summer is reckless. The girl who tans is unmarriable. You notice more and more how women compete for paleness. How the pharmacy sells new powders, newer creams, arsenic, wafers, pearl dust tablets, raw egg masks to draw out color. Even death becomes desirable as long as you look lovely in the casket. In 1871, a woman was buried in her ball gown, cheeks powdered, lips blotted with carmine. The papers praised her beauty. They did not mention the bleeding in her lungs. From years of lead absorption, you saw her once before the coughing grew worse. She sat beside you at tea, her smile cracked faintly at the corners. You remember thinking she looked like a doll left too long in the attic, and now you wonder what. You look like you stare in the mirror each night. You check for flaws, a blemish, a freckle, a trace of sun. You rub lemon on your hands to fade the darkening. You pinch your skin to test its tone. You sleep away from windows, you wake before dawn to avoid the light, and still, your face betrays. You, flush here, a shadow there. You hate it, you hide it. You tell no one how many layers of cirrus you now wear. Because the girl who doesn't powder, she won't be invited back, she won't be painted, remembered, adored. She will be forgotten, or worse, noticed. And as you scrape one more layer of skin before bed, you wonder, if whiteness is the measure of beauty, how much of yourself must vanish before you are finally enough? The science they ignored, you meet him by accident. The chemist, a boy, really, barely 20, eyes too wide for someone who's already seen so much. He stops you outside the apothecary, hands trembling, holding a folded letter. Please. He says, don't buy it. I've tested it. I know what's inside. You don't answer. You don't have to. The powder is already in your bag. Later. In his makeshift lab. A cluttered back room behind a bookshop. He shows you the vials. White lead. Vinegar. A binding agent that smells like spoiled milk. He speaks in fits and starts, stumbling over terms like oxidation and systemic toxicity. But then he opens a cage. A rat lies still on its side, fur patchy, mouth foaming. I fed it a single dose, he whispers. Just what you'd use in one application. You step back, not because of the rat, because of the mirror in your mind, the way your fingers tremble, the way your gums bleed when you brush too hard, the ache behind your eyes when you wake up too fast. He begs you to stop. He says he's written papers. Sent them to every medical journal he can find. Moshammer responded. One replied, don't frighten the ladies. Another returned his letter with a note in red ink. Scientific hysteria is not publishable. You want to believe him, but the powder smells like roses, and it hides the dark circles under your eyes. And without it, you feel exposed, not just physically, socially, spiritually. You were raised to equate beauty with goodness, purity, worth, if you show you're real, faith, splotchy, tired, aging. Who will marry you? Who will hire you? Who will love you? He says, your skin is breaking down. You nod, you don't stop. You try it for 3 days. You try. You scrub your cheeks raw with lemon and vinegar. You use starch and chalk instead. You avoid mirrors, and then someone at the post office says, "You look unwell." Your mother frowns at dinner. Your suitor forgets to write, so you apply it again. Meanwhile, the boy chemist is called a crank. The newspapers mock him. A caricature appears in the London Gazette. His wild eyes, the poisoned rat. The headline, "Beauty Alarmist Attacks Our Ladies." Laird's triples production in 1872. Sales soar. So to funerals, doctors begin to note a trend, not in public, but in private ledgers. Young woman, 23, no prior illness, chronic coughing. Teeth loose, death sudden. They never write the word powder. And now, when you cough, it tastes like iron. When you brush your hair, it comes away in handfuls. Your hands shake when you lift the mirror, and your lips are pale, not with powder, but with blood. The chemist sees you again in passing. He doesn't speak, just looks down, ashamed, as if your choice was his failure. You want to tell him it wasn't just you. It was the world that made beauty a requirement. It was society that turned poison into praise, but you don't say anything because your voice is hoarse now. And when you speak, you taste copper, and as another layer of powder settles on your skin, you wonder, if the truth arrives too late, will anyone still be alive to listen? The case of the disappearing women. You hear it in whispers. A girl in Yorkshire, beautiful, bright, barely 16, they say she went mad. Began scratching at her cheeks with sewing scissors, tore half her face before they stopped her, died. 6 weeks later, the church bell rang only once. Another in Manchester. Her hair fell out in clumps. She stopped speaking. Then her eyes crossed. They say she couldn't find the door anymore. Her organs failed before anyone thought to call a doctor. By the time the priest arrived, she was already cold. No one said the word poison. They never do. These women vanish. Quietly, buried in haste. Fever, the midwife says. Melancholy, the neighbor offers. Inheritance madness, a cousin adds, as if grief can be passed through blood. No one mentions the powder pots, the rouge jars, the arsenic wafers tucked beneath the mattress. No one names the thing that killed them, because naming makes it real. Instead, they're mourned as ghosts of what they used to be. She was so lovely, not a blemish on her, skin like china. That's what the eulogies become. Memories of beauty, not of pain. They speak as if the only part of her worth remembering was the part she poisoned to keep. And you wonder, when did the sickness begin? Was it the first time you pinched your cheeks to fake a flush? The first time you reapplied lead paste in a fever sweat? The first time you looked in the mirror and thought, not enough. You've seen it before now. The signs, a friend who yawns too often. A cousin whose teeth shift in her mouth. That strange hollowing behind the eyes. You tell yourself they're just tired, just pale from the cold. But then one stops answering letters. Another is taken ill and never returns to the sewing circle. Her mother won't speak of it. Her father has gone to the countryside, disappeared. It's happening more often now. The obituary is read like riddles. Sudden affliction, a wasting illness. An ailment of the nerves. You know what that means? You've heard what it looks like up close. The twitching. The nosebleeds, the pale foam on the pillow in the morning. But the shops still sell the powders. The newspapers still print the ads. The women still wear the mask, because to stop would mean facing the truth. That beauty, in your time, is a death sentence signed in rouge and sealed with white lead. You feel your own hands tremble more often now. You've dropped your brush twice this week. You forget names. Last night, your nose bled for the first time. A thin red thread on the handkerchief. You folded it quickly. Pretended it wasn't there, but it is. And you start to ask yourself, in the silence before sleep, will I vanish like they did? Will my name be whispered, then lost? And when they bury me too quickly, too quietly, will they remember my laugh, my voice, my mind, or only the skin I used to have? When medicine made it worse, you go to a sanatorium. For rest, they say. For rejuvenation. The walls are whitewashed. The sheets stiff with lye. They hand you a gown and take your clothes. Too heavy, the nurse mutters, as if linen were. A burden. The windows don't open. The air smells like vinegar and chalk. You are told to drink the tonic. It comes in a green glass bottle, thick at the bottom, cloudy near the neck. The label curls with moisture. No ingredients listed, only the words. Dr. Templeton's Bloom Restorative for the distressed female constitution. It tastes of metal, bitter, biting, they say that. Means it's working. The doctor, a narrow man with a trembling mustache, calls it a humoral corrective. He explains how your bile needs balancing, how your skin reflects the disorder within. He says the tonic contains arsenic. Just a trace to drive out the toxins. You vomit for 3 days. They say that's normal. The illness must leave the body. You wake in sweats, clawing at the straw mattress. You weep without meaning to. The nurse pats your head with a cloth soaked in rose water. She won't look you in the eye. And then, improvement, your skin clears, the red boils fade. The bruised tint beneath your eyes retreats. Your complexion glows like porcelain. The other women notice. Some ask for your tonic by name. The nurse begins calling you our little success story, but your hands tremble when you eat. You misplace words. You forget your sister's name. At night, the ceiling bends, the candles blur. Your vision twists like heat over stone. The doctor calls it curative decay. A sign the poison has reached the right depths. It must scrape the rot from your blood, he says, as if you're a barrel of spoiled wine. You don't scream. No one does. Here, suffering is a form of obedience. Pain is something you pay in exchange for beauty, for acceptance, for permission to re-enter the world without shame. So you drink morning, noon, dusk. Each dose followed by retching, shivering, the scent of iron in your mouth. And then the mirror, the reward, your skin gleams. Pale, perfect, ageless. You look younger than your nieces, younger than your portrait, younger than the fear that now lives behind your eyes. The doctor calls this restoration. He smiles when he sees you. Says you'll be discharged soon, fit to marry again. He jokes, though your last husband is barely cold in the ground. You try to laugh, it comes out as a gasp, and later, lying in bed, hand pressed against your ribs where something aches deep and strange, you begin to ask, what if this is not healing? What if it's just disguised dying? The tonic glows in its green bottle beside you, half empty or half full, depending on the story you prefer. And tonight, when you close your eyes, you wonder if the medicine kills the sickness, but takes everything else with it. Was it the cure, or just a slower kind of poison? The household death trap. Your vanity is lined with killers. The jars gleam under the morning light. Pale powders, pink rouge, a small pot of crimson lip tint. The brush handles are ivory. The mirror is gilt-edged. It all looks like wealth, like care, like safety, but the powders are laced with lead. The rouge is cinnabar, mercury sulfide, the lip stain, cochineal, and crushed beetle. If you're lucky, but the cheap ones, the pretty ones, burn when applied. You think that's normal? And the bottle of eye drops? Belladonna? Deadly nightshade? 1 drop widens the pupils, makes your gaze more striking. 2 drops cloud your vision. You use them anyway. Beauty demands risk. Even the wallpaper glows. You chose the arsenic green yourself. So fashionable. Imported from Paris, it gives the room a sheen of elegance. It also flakes when damp, dusting the floor with poison. You notice your headaches are worse in the sitting room. You don't mention it. Your gloves are soft kid leather. They're tanned. With mercury, so is your hat band. So are your boots. Your home is quiet, polished, filled with light. It is also filled with poison. And your daughter is watching. She stands near the doorway, hands clasped, watching you as you paint your cheeks with death. She mimics the motions, lifts a hand to her face, pretending to trace, powder across her skin. Her fingers are still chubby, her nails bitten, her eyes wide. She says nothing. You offer her a smile. She asks if she can try the powder, just once. A little on her cheeks to see what it feels like, to see what it makes her become. You hesitate. There's hardly any danger in one dusting. She's healthy, she's young. But you remember how it began for you. A single dab, A single night. A single compliment that made it feel worth it. You remember how your mother looked, powdered and pale and dying slowly in the bath. But no one warned you. No one ever does. You lift the brush. You pretend to dab her cheeks. You don't dip it in the jar. She doesn't notice. She beams. She thinks she's glowing. She twirls in front of the mirror, pleased. You tell her she looks beautiful, and you mean it, but your heart aches. Because everything around her is waiting. The dolls painted with lead-laced enamel. The rugs cleaned with arsenic salts. The lace collar that still holds the faint tang of the mercury rinse. You've decorated a world of poison and called it home. And the day will come soon, when she doesn't ask permission. You don't know how to stop it. You don't know if you ever really wanted to. Tonight, you'll clean the brush, you'll wipe the mirror, you'll fold your gloves and tuck them away. You'll tell yourself you're being careful, that you're being a good mother, but tomorrow the jars will still be there. And as your daughter sleeps beside you, still unmarked, still safe, you ask yourself when she reaches for beauty, will you have taught her to survive it? Or just to smile through? The pain? Etiquette for the terminally elegant. You receive a copy of Godey's Lady's Book. The edges are gold-leafed, the cover embossed with roses. Inside, 1,000 commandments for the well-bred woman. They speak in velvet tones. How to sit, how to walk, how to breathe without drawing attention, and most important of all, how to appear beautiful without ever seeming aware of it. Soft hands, pale cheeks, a quiet voice, a faint trembling, the magazine says. Is considered charming in sensitive women. You read it twice, you already tremble, not charmingly, not delicately, not in the way a heroine does on the porch as her suitor kisses her hand. No, yours comes in sharp jerks, wrists twitching. As you sew, teacups rattling in your grip, your handwriting staggers. You've broken 2 combs this week alone. You know what it is? The doctor called it plumbism, lead tremor. A consequence of continued exposure, your rouge, your powder. The glaze on your tea service, you nodded as he spoke. Lips pressed into a polite smile. You didn't dare interrupt. He wasn't scolding. He was marveling, like a scholar discussing insects pinned to velvet. You still wear the makeup, you have to. The books say so. The etiquette manuals, the sermons, the society pages. Beauty is a form of discipline, one editorial says. It separates the virtuous from the slovenly. You keep the quote pinned inside your wardrobe. You read it every morning. It helps you stand up straight. And the suffering, that's part of the refinement. A lady must suffer, the book whispers. But she must never speak of it, so you adjust your gloves when your fingers go numb. You powder over the bruises where your cap pinches too tight. You drink boiled milk to soothe the ulcers blooming along your gums. You do everything right, because being beautiful correctly is harder than anything else you've ever learned. The blood starts one morning as you prepare for a garden party. It stains the lace of your corset, sudden, bright, blooming like a secret. You hide it quickly. You clean the fabric in cold water, holding your breath, praying no one comes in. You say nothing, you apply your rouge, you tighten your bodice, you leave the house smiling. At the party, no one notices your hands trembling. They call you radiant. They ask after your skin, your regimen. Your routine, you lie, as politely as you can. You say lemon water and proper rest and a walk every morning. One girl nods, eager. You can see the lines forming near her mouth already. She'll be gone by 30. You wonder if they'll write about you someday. In a footnote, perhaps, or an obituary, a woman of remarkable poise and grace. No one will say poison. No one will say punished. They'll admire your discipline. Your posture, the perfect way you folded your hands even at the end. And tonight as you undress and find more blood, this time on the sheets, you wonder if etiquette demands elegance, what does it ask of the guy? Fleeing to the country. Your husband says you need air. Fresh country air, he calls it, as if the wind could scrape the sickness from your skin. He says it gently, with a physician's note folded in his pocket and a carriage waiting outside. For your nerves, he says, but you hear what he means. You're becoming a problem. You leave the powders behind, not by choice. They stay in the city. The brushes, the rouge, the white lead dust. Your maid packs only what's necessary. Your vanity feels smaller without them. Your face feels wrong. The house in the country is lovely, quiet, filled with clean linens and polished wood. The windows open without sticking. The hedges are trimmed. The silence is absolute. Your headache begins to fade, but your heart doesn't. The first week, your hands still reach for the jar that isn't there. You catch yourself avoiding mirrors when you do look just briefly. In passing, your face startles you. No powder, no polish. Your skin is no longer porcelain. It's pinker now, uneven. Human and older, the lines at your mouth weren't visible before. The gray at your temples didn't shine through the lead. Your lips look smaller, your eyes duller. There is something true in your reflection now, and you hate it. You hate that it's yours. Letters come from the city. Not many. A cousin asks about your recovery. A friend inquires after your appetite. No one mentions beauty. No one says you're missed. Your husband writes only once. He says he's managing things. You know what that means. You've heard the whispers before. Women sent away rarely return. Or if they do, they are different, dimmer, more grateful, more careful. Their opinions sanded down, their voices lower. They wear less rouge, speak less often. Some remarry. Some vanish. The town has its own whisper, too. She's unwell. She's delicate. She always was, wasn't she? You walk the gardens to clear your mind. You speak with no one. The maid brings meals, avoids eye contact. You press flowers between the pages of books you can't finish. You sleep too long or not at all. Sometimes you touch your face in the mirror, sometimes you don't recognize it. You wonder if that was the point, to strip you of your mask so thoroughly that even you forget who lived beneath it. To make the sickness seem internal instead of something poured into your skin by powdered hands and poison jars, because now no one talks about the rouge. No one talks about the powders, only about you. And as the days stretch longer, as the spring creeps into the hedgerows and your hair continues to gray, you begin to fear the worst. You may not be dying anymore, but you might be disappearing. Tonight, you light no candle. You do not brush your hair. You do not rehearse your return, because part of you suspects there won't be one. And as you stare into the dark mirror, eyes searching for something familiar, you whisper the question, if you come back plain, will they still call you mad? The scandal that almost changed everything. It begins with a headline. Bold, brutal, unmistakable, poisoned for beauty. Black ink against brittle pulp, printed in a New York paper best known for theater listings and gossip, but this time, it's not fiction. Inside, names, brands, formulas, testimonies from women whose teeth fell out in their sleep, whose fingertips went numb, who bled from the nose when they smiled too wide. They name Laird's bloom of youth first. You freeze when you see it, the same label that sits on your vanity, the same powder caked inside your favorite brush. You run, your finger along your cheek, and it tingles. Suddenly, every throb, every tremor, every lost word feels louder, sharper, real. You're not alone in your fear. The papers sell out, women scream in pharmacies. Lawsuits are filed, bottles are. Burned in alleyways behind boarding houses, one woman faints in a department store when she sees a display of creams. A mother locks her daughter's rouge in a drawer and throws away the key. For a moment, a bright, breathless moment, it feels like this might change everything. Doctors step forward. Activists speak on radio. A senator from Connecticut calls. For investigation, there's talk of new legislation, warnings on packaging, limits on lead, regulation of imported cosmetics. You see women on the street barefaced for the first time in years. Some of them blush. Some look proud. Some just look relieved. But you've lived long enough to know what happens next. The advertisers withdraw, quietly, quickly. Without apology, they pull funding from the paper. No threats, no drama, just absence. By week's end, the expose is gone from the newsstands. Replaced by fashion notes and garden advice, the reporters are reassigned. The editor resigns. And then the real silence begins. You wait for follow-up stories. You find none. You write. To the publisher, your letter is never answered. 2 weeks later, a man from Boston buys the paper. The new masthead says, a modern woman's companion. It prints makeup tips by May. One column advises using a touch of ammonia to brighten tired skin. You feel a heat rise behind your temples. It's not rage, not yet. It's certainty. They all knew. The brands, the chemists, the stylists, the editors. They knew what was in the jars and powders and lotions. They knew what it did, and they still smiled and sold it, and told you it was your fault when your hair came out in clumps. And now Laird's bloom of youth is back, not with apologies, not with remorse, but with a new label with botanical extracts, a green ribbon on the box, a testimonial from a starlet with white gloves and blank eyes. The same poison, the same lie, just softer fonts. You still have your old bottle. You keep it on your nightstand like a relic, like a gravestone. The label is worn, the cap cracked. You don't use it, but you don't throw it away. Because one day, someone will ask again. One day, the silence will break again. And when it does, you want proof. Tonight, you sit in bed with a newspaper folded beside you. The old label in your hand, and you wonder, when the truth returns, who will be left to hear it? The first nosebleed, it starts as a trickle, warm, thin, almost polite. Just a bloom of red on the edge of your handkerchief. You pause, blink. Then bring the cloth away from your face. It's not small anymore. The stain is spread, soaking through the cotton like ink through paper. You press it to your nose again, harder this time. Your other hand steadying yourself on the vanity. The room tilts, not a full spin, just a lean, a slow, off-kilter shift in your bones. You sit before you fall. The bleeding worsens, a sudden gush, bright and startling, spilling between your fingers and onto the bodice of your nightgown. You gasp, not in fear, not yet, but in disbelief, like your body has betrayed you in the most public way. You think of the girl from Yorkshire. You'd heard about her only weeks ago. Distant cousin or cousin's maid or someone's niece. She bled too. In the market, they said, from her nose, then her gums, then other places. She died 2 days later. They said it was an infection. They said she hadn't been careful, but you remember the powders on her dressing table. You remember the same chalky bloom on her cheekbones. You remember the rat found in the alley behind her boarding house, eyes crusted, fur stiff, a strange foam on its whiskers. And now, here you are. You lie back, handkerchief soaked, the ceiling above you going soft at the edges. The oil lamp flickers, your fingers tremble, your heart skips a beat, not metaphorically, but truly. A flutter, a catch. You feel cold, not just chilled, absent. Like your blood is leaving and your soul is thinking of going with it. Still, your hand reaches for the powder. You know it's absurd. You know what it contains. You know it's likely the reason you're bleeding in the first place, but your face feels pale, uneven. Your lips are colorless. Your eyes. Wrong. Someone might come in. A maid, a neighbor, a doctor. If your husband decides you're worth the coin. And when they do, you want to look perfect, untouched, beautiful, as if youth is still clinging to you. Even as your breath grows shallow and your heartbeat scatters like spilled pearls. So you open the lid, you dip the brush, you apply it gently to your cheeks, your brow, the tip of your nose, careful to avoid the blood. A final layer, not to impress, not even to deceive, but because it's all you know. The act soothes you. The routine of it, the lie of it, the soft tap of powder against skin, like a lullaby for your vanity. You rest the brush beside you. You fold the bloodstained cloth as best you can. You lie back and close your eyes. Maybe you will wake, maybe not. But if anyone sees you now, if this is the end, at least your face will look serene, youthful, unspoiled. Because even dying, even frightened, even alone, you want to be remembered as beautiful. And as you exhale slowly, heartbeat fluttering like moth wings, you whisper the last hope that ever really mattered. Let them say I looked young. The funeral with the loveliest corpse, you're not there. But they say your face looked beautiful. The undertaker worked late by lamplight. Said the skin was soft. The color still good. Remarked with something close to reverence that you hardly looked dead at all. Pale, yes, but in a refined way, as if you had simply gone to sleep thinking of gardens, lace, and polite applause. No one asks why your gums were blue. No one wonders how your lips stayed so pink. They assume skill, talent, mercy. The women who come to view your body do not cry. They whisper, admire the smoothness of your brow, the stillness of your lashes. One calls you lucky. As though death were a prize, so long as it preserved your beauty, you are dressed in your finest gown, ivory, stiff with starch. The veil covers your throat. No one wants to see how thin you became. The hands are crossed, the fingers powdered, the mouth slightly parted in an echo of gentility. Outside, the air smells like coal and rain. Inside, the parlor is thick with violets. A neighbor says he died of a nervous complaint. Another mutters something about pneumonia. No one says lead. No one says poison. They place a single white rose on your chest. It covers the brooch you wore, the one that no longer closes properly. Your shoes are too tight, but it doesn't matter. You won't be walking again. The doctor signs the certificate with a practiced hand. 'Cause unknown, that's what. They write when they know exactly what it was, but not how to admit it. Your daughter watches the carriage pass. She doesn't cry. She holds your old powder box in both hands. The one with the silver filigree in the cracked mirror, she keeps it closed, but runs her thumb over the latch again and again, as if waiting for it to spring open on its own. People say she looks like you. She hears it often. She's too young to understand the finer points of death. But she knows what a lady is supposed to do. She keeps her back straight, her gloves clean, her voice soft. She listens carefully when the mourners talk about your grace, your charm, your flawless complexion. At home that night, she slips away from the adults, into your room, into the silence. She sits on your bed, the sheets still faintly creased from the last time you lay there. She opens the powder box. It smells like you. That's strange, sweet. Metallic perfume, the scent of masks and mirrors and wanting to be wanted. The puff still holds a ghost of color, that pale, unnatural pink. She presses it to her cheek and laughs, just once, quiet and delighted. She doesn't know yet, not what it means, not what it did to you, not what it will do to her. She only knows one thing for certain, standing in the echo of your room, holding the box like a treasure. Beautiful things should never be buried. Generations who inherited the powder, decades pass. The jars on the vanity change shape, rounder, taller, adorned with gilt and glass, but what's inside remains the same. Different poisons, new perfumes, still the same promise. You can be beautiful. If you're willing to risk everything else, now it's not lead, but mercury, for blemishes, for unevenness, for the slight discoloration that comes with sorrow, labor, or time. The bottles say calomel and elegant script. No. One says corrosion. No one mentions madness. Mothers pass the jars down like heirlooms, not with malice, but with tenderness. This one for redness, this one for shine, this one for nights when your husband doesn't look at you the same. You grow up watching her tap the powder puff once. Twice, watching her lips purse when she brushes rouge onto the hollows of her cheeks. Watching her cough into the sink when she thinks you're not listening, and you learn to do the same. In the 1870s, it's arsenic wafers, small, pale pills taken each morning like Holy Communion. They bleach the skin from the inside out, women. Brag about how smooth their faces are becoming, even as their stomachs begin to rebel. Doctors warn, some quietly buried in journals, few people read. They note the lesions, the trembling hands, the pale gums. But beauty still holds the final word by the 1890s. The powders glow faintly under gaslight. Stage actors cake their faces in lead paint so the front row can see their expressions. The theaters are warm with applause. Cologne and chemical fumes backstage. No one lives past 40. No one questions it. Theatrical consumption. They call it a romantic wasting, a price of passion, a fate for the devoted. A woman in Ohio dies after ingesting a lotion sold for eternal youth. Her obituary praises her appearance. A girl in Vienna loses her hair at 16 from mercury cream. Her suitors dwindle. Her mother blames her for applying it too generously. Meanwhile, the jars multiply. Advertisements bloom in shop windows. Pink perfection, milk of Venus, moon white complexion water. The names grow gentler, more musical, but the contents remain caustic, and no one stops. You don't either. Because your wedding is coming, or your portrait is scheduled, or you've simply grown tired of the mirror's silence when you hope for praise, so you dip your fingers into the powder, just as your mother did, just as her mother did, just as her mother did. Though her name is long forgotten, and her bones lie quiet beneath a churchyard veil, so you don't know all their stories, but you know how they looked in their portraits. Beautiful, pale, unreal, gone too soon. The vanity smells of lavender rose, and something sharper beneath. You tap the jar closed and catch your own reflection. Luminous, delicate, perfect. You don't feel perfect. Your teeth ache, your pulse jumps for no reason. A strange ringing sits at the back of your ears, like a warning you refuse to interpret. Still, you whisper the same thing every woman before you has whispered. Just a little more. The medical journal that was too late in 1898. A quiet issue of The Lancet lands on desks across London. Doctors flip past it on their way to lunch. Surgeons glance once, then reach for their pipe. It isn't front-page material. There's no plague, no scandal, no royal injury, just a plain title. Restrained. Severe. Of powders and peril inside. An exhaustive study. Clinical, dense, meticulous. It lists 142 women. Names were available. Ages when known, symptoms tracked, from tremor to madness to the final collapse. The conclusion is simple, devastating, and not at all surprising. They died from the powder on their faces. Not all at once, not even dramatically. Most faded like candle smoke. First their appetite, then their color, then their minds. A few went quickly. Seizures, organ failure. One walked into a lake. Another tore at her cheeks until they bled, screaming about beetles under her skin. The article is clear. White lead. Venetian cerus, calomel, mercury salves, all documented, all fatal, all still sold. The report includes receipts, testimonials, chemical analyses. One physician notes he found a teaspoon of lead oxide in a single jar of youth elixir. Enough to kill a child, enough to rot through skin, and yet the public shrugs because the women are already dead, because the rest are still beautiful, because vanity still sells. And now comes in a prettier bottle. You imagine the doctor who wrote it. Late nights hunched over a desk, hands ink-stained, eyes red from reading coroner's reports. You imagine him circling phrases like necrosis of the jaw, or accelerated cognitive degradation, or common in cosmetic application. He does not scream, he does not dramatize, but on the final page, in a rare moment of fury, he adds one handwritten line in the margin of his published copy. We have known this for 100 years, and it's true. There were warnings in 1790, again in 1823, again in 1854. French physicians tried to outlaw certain rouge formulas. German apothecaries refused to sell powders to pregnant women. But no one listened, or if they did, they chose differently. Because the mirror still rewards silence, because youth is always urgent, because fear whispers, just once more, then you'll stop. The study is archived, bound in leather, cataloged in Latin. It rests on a shelf in a quiet hospital library, where no one ever looks for it. The women who read it, if they do, are already using. Newer creams, newer names, same poisons, the next month. A new advertisement appears in the window of Waltham's pharmacy. Now safer than ever. Milk of iris complexion wash. No mention of what's inside. No mention of the Lancet. You read the flyer twice. You buy the bottle anyway. Because the study was too late. Because you still have a dance to attend. Because you can't stop now. Not when your reflection still smiles back. And so, as another name fades beneath a fresh grave marker, and another bottle is opened with shaking hands, the doctor's final note echoes into silence. We have known this for 100 years, and yet still, you apply it in the morning. The echo in your mirror, you're not alive anymore. But your story is not in the way you hoped. No monument, no plaque, no preserved love letters stained with perfume. No, you live now in a glass case under museum lighting. You are an object of curiosity, a relic, a warning whispered too late. Your jar sits labeled Victorian lead-based cosmetic, cause of death, unknown. Unknown, as if it were a mystery, as if the powder didn't eat through your gums, as if your fingernails didn't turn blue, your hair didn't thin, your memory didn't break apart like dried petals crushed between pages of a book no one finished reading. But they can't say it was the powder, because to say that would be to admit complicity, centuries of it. Mothers, doctors, advertisers, lovers who said you look radiant, priests who called beauty a divine gift, pharmacists who smiled while wrapping the poison in paper. So they say unknown, but you know every tremor that preceded. The collapse, you remember the taste of metal behind your teeth. You recall the dreams, the ones that melted at the edges. The ones where your skin flaked like ash. You remember the mirror, always the mirror, and now the mirror remembers. It's still there, not the one you used. Exactly, but its descendant, 1,000 reflections later. It still hums with the echo of your gaze, your silhouette, pale, perfect. Hollowed, lives in the corners of advertisements and Instagram filters. Your powdered ghost leans over. The shoulders of women applying serums with unfamiliar names. Your story slips between slogans like, for timeless skin, for eternal glow, for beauty that lasts forever. They don't mention the lead anymore. They don't need to. Now it's retinol, formaldehyde, hydroquinone. Now it's bleaching creams in neon boxes. Now it's procedures with scalpels and lasers, minimally invasive. They say as though your vanity can finally be cut free from your mortality. But nothing is new. You see it all, not with eyes. But with memory, you are stitched into the seams of every too tight bodice, every too pale foundation. Every girl told she's almost pretty if she just tried harder. They don't know your name, but they know your silhouette. They're chasing it still. And you want to scream, not to frighten, not to haunt, but to warn. You want to whisper. Through the glass, you want to reach across time and say, it isn't worth it. But they wouldn't believe you, they never did. So instead, you linger, you watch, you listen to museum guides mispronounce the ingredients. You hear children giggle and move on to the next exhibit. You feel the hum of air conditioning and neon. Light flickering against your jar, and sometimes late at night, when no one's around. You catch a woman staring too long, leaning in, reading every word on your label. Her reflection caught in the glass, your reflection layered behind hers. She doesn't know why, but she shivers. She touches her cheek, she walks away slowly, and as the lights dim, you ask yourself one last question. Will she be the one who finally listens? Or just another name? Beneath cause of death, unknown.